I've been obviously breeding snakes for, since I was, 15 years old, which is a while, you know what I mean? But there's still a lot of animals. People ask me all the time, like, oh, is there a project you really wish you could breed? And some people even think like you've bred, so many species of reptiles, maybe I've, worked with all the ones I've wanted to, which couldn't be further from the truth. I think that, I always tell people that, I think that my list has grown exponentially since I started. I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a ton of them, and I'm just going to go over a few, and I'd like to hear in the chat from you guys and in the comments afterwards, what your dream species are, and I'm not going to say that the species I'm going to talk about right now are necessarily dream species, because I've bred a lot of my dream species already, and there's even one or two species on this list that I bred in the past, and I would just like to breed again because it's been since my early 20s and stuff like that. But I to start right out of the rip, I have kept and currently do not have diamond pythons before. So I've kept diamond pythons. I do not have any diamond pythons right now. I would like to get some diamond pythons for
Dude,
sure.
They're so sick.
Yeah, and it's a species that I have always wanted to breed. I think the first diamond python I ever got, I was probably in my mid-20s. So it's been a quarter century ago. And for the longest time, I had diamond pythons in my collection, but just never had them long enough to breed them, for one reason or another. And they are very similar to a carpet python, but they are known for being more difficult to breed than carpet pythons. And it could very well be that they need to be kept cooler. I know like Tom Crutchfield has had success and he keeps them outside. Now, granted, he's in, Homestead, Florida, which is pretty warm.
Yeah.
But in the winter, every now and then they'll get pretty chilly. Now, when I was at my friend Peter Birch's in Gosford, New South Wales, literally we saw diamond pythons on his property.
Wow.
Wild ones. And they will actually get down into the mid-30s during the wintertime. So
bizarre, right?
So diamond pythons can obviously handle mid-30s temperatures, which is pretty crazy. So that might be why we didn't have success in the past, and so many other people don't have success breeding them, is maybe we just don't get them cold enough. I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know what the actual answer is, but
there's a code yet to be unlocked. It's pretty much
and there's been some people. I mean, there's been plenty of people that have had success breeding carpet python, diamond python. So it's not like it's not the Boland's python where hardly anyone's had success, but it's certainly not as easy as say a jungle carpet or a coastal or something on that line. So I'd like to, number one, I think a really cool diamond python display, especially if we expand into 3.0, that's high on the list, is to get a diamond python display, because they are definitely a pretty arboreal snake, more so than some of the other subspecies of carpet python. Or subspecies of Spilote, and they just make a great display. You could do a really cool arboreal, branches, lots of foliage, and that snake's going to probably perch up on those branches a lot. Yeah. And it's going to look really cool, and it might make for a really good opportunity for us to breed them in that kind of naturalistic environment. Even if they don't get cold in that environment, maybe we would get lucky and produce them. But if not, I give a rip at it. So I will definitely be on the lookout for some diamond pythons coming up pretty soon again, especially if we're so fortunate to expand again here in 2021, which is what the plan is. But, we'll talk more about that later on in the podcast and stuff like that. I think another species that I really would love I did breed for a number of years was actually ring pythons, Bismarck ring pythons.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it was an interesting story because, so many things. Yeah, pull up how beautiful these guys look. I mean, they're absolutely incredible. But the interesting thing about, as adults, they're not as pretty. But as babies, just take a look at those babies.
Just so stunning, dude. Jack-o'-lantern snakes, Yeah,
probably the most stunning Halloween type snake you could ever have. But of course you can punch up that's a beautiful.
This is an adult, right?
But that's an adult, so they definitely fade out. They
That's a shame.
But I still look at the iridescence on that animal. Right. They're beautiful.
Now, do you think is there any morphs with these guys at all?
Well, they're striped. And you could probably, if you scroll down a bit, you'll probably find a striped right there in the middle.
And then there's, this one.
Nope.
No?
In the middle. That's those banded. Those are banded.
This one?
That's striped.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay. I got you.
Yeah, banded and striped. So, and those are naturally occurring mutations. That's not anything other than something that naturally happens. As far as actual mutations, I've never heard of a mutation of ring python. Probably because there's just not that many bloodlines in the country. To be honest with you, unfortunately, they haven't been imported in probably 15, 20 years. And as a matter of fact, there was a guy named I can't remember what his name is, but he was a Global Export was his company name, and he was in New Guinea, and he had permits to export 100 babies that were farmed in New Guinea.
Wow.
And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife would not give the permits to get them in because I was trying to get them. I was like, I'll take all 100 babies.
Wow, really?
And, because it would be fresh bloodline. It would be, just pretty amazing thing. And but unfortunately, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife was an absolute zero.
Yeah,
no.
shut that shit down.
Shut it down. It's not coming in. But I'd like to get into ring pythons again. The thing that's interesting is when I bred them before, number one, they're pretty high strung. They like to bite a little bit and stuff like that. But they got really cheap. That was the thing. It got to the point where literally they were retail like $125. And if you wanted to sell a pair or two pair of them, oftentimes you're selling for like $75. And it was, it's just weird. $75. Now they're like $1,500 a pair, or maybe even $1,500 a piece.
Really?
They're very expensive now. They went from literally being like $75 to $100 a piece to now being $1,000+. But and that's a pretty big one that this.
I was gonna say, how
big
big do they normally get? Like a ball python size, almost.
They get they'll get 7 foot.
Wow, okay.
But they don't get as round. I mean, a very very big animal is going to be about the size of a ball python, but that's a giant one.
Yeah.
Very seldom do they get that large, and I think we had 10 or 12 adults when we finally got rid of the adults, and that was because of the ball python craze. What happened was the ball python. And we were on the front end of that, obviously. The ball python craze started to take off. And when it started to actually go, not when I first started when there was no money in them, but when people started to buy them and they were worth money, not just me, but so many people really reduced. It was like, hey, listen, I take up a 6 foot area with or 8 foot area with this pair of Dumerals boas that's going to have 15 babies that I'm going to sell for $1,500 a piece, or $1,500 for the whole litter, or I could put 80 ball pythons in that space. You know what I mean? It just made business sense to get rid of a lot of animals and replace them with ball pythons,
Right.
And I love ball pythons, so that was good too. But I do look back on that time, and I do regret getting rid of my Bismarck ring pythons, getting rid of my Dumerals boas, getting rid of my yellow anacondas. I mean, there were a whole bunch of species that I worked with that I got rid of them. As a matter of fact, back then, there wasn't a lot of people producing carpet pythons. I mean, they were being produced, but not by, a gazillion people. And we were literally producing like 500 baby carpet pythons a year.
Wow.
From jungle carpets to red babies to Irian Jayas to coastals. So we had a big carpet python collection. I'm sure, and I don't say this from a egotistical standpoint, I'm just saying that I'm sure we were the largest producer of carpet pythons back in the early 90s.
Get the hell out of here. That's crazy.
And because I don't think anyone was producing maybe 100 carpet pythons, let alone 500, But there wasn't a really big market for them. I remember having like baby, maybe in 92, 94, in that range, right in that range. I remember having babies and yearlings available, and I probably had 200 yearlings that I had.
So yeah, they're just, and it's so weird because they're such a beautiful animal. I mean, their faces are crazy.
Yeah, we were producing stripe stuff now. The tri-stripe stuff now. Back then, we were just calling them stripes. We're producing all kinds of really cool stuff. We were the second company to produce the jungles, the Atherton Tabelins, and in the country, and so we had a lot of really cool stuff, but it just didn't make sense. We could get rid of all those carpet pythons and replace them with
something that will move off the shelves.
Ball pythons that are not only they're financially successful, but they're also something that I enjoyed as well too.
They're beautiful, yeah.
So again, Bismarck ring pythons high on the list. Don't know if it's necessarily a reptarium animal, but
now are they related to Dumerals? What, or not Dumerals, Dielbrids is what I meant to say, because they look kind of like shiny like that.
Exactly. I think that they're in the same genus now. They used to be both Liasis, but I believe that both Dielbrids and they're I think both Dielbrids and ring pythons moved. Let's see what they I'm pretty sure they're in the same genus. Like I said, they used to be in the Liasis. These used to be called Liasis boa. And then D'Alberts were Liasis d'albertisi.
So now it's interesting that it says boa. Like, why is that? Is it actually a boa or?
No, it's a python. It's just I don't know why the last name in this or the species,
just happens to be boa.
The species name was boa, but
interesting.
But so hopefully we'll get back into those. And right now I'm in this position where it's this weird kind of dynamic where I'm thinking about decreasing BHB in some areas, but yet I'm looking to add more species to BHB.
Yeah, you know, it's almost like you're making it more eclectic.
Yeah, and I think that's a great term. Is I want the collection to be much more eclectic. I will still work with some general stuff that I love and stuff like that, but I would like to have a more eclectic collection that people can come and see, or when we produce babies, people are like, holy crap, who's producing pied moose around?
Yeah.
Who's producing this or who's producing that? Where it's like this, not common stuff.
Well, it's cool to see this evolution in you too, in the sense of like going from where you had to breed to where you want to breed.
Yeah, it's a hobby now. I mean, I tell people this all the time. I know BHB does make money, and it is the biggest part about BHB is, we have people that it's their livelihood, right? We have our crew that pay their bills, and we don't take that lightly. I mean, we don't, the people that work for us, we take a tremendous amount of responsibility, and the fact that they have to get a paycheck, and so BHB is definitely a company, and it's a good company, but for me, it's a hobby. It's a hobby that is whatever. So I want to continue to move.
But that's what's awesome is because now you're getting to like, oh, I want to work with this. I want to work with this. Yeah. And it's not like that whole thing where you said before where it's like, oh, but it takes up too much real estate. It's like, I can do that now.
Yeah, I can do whatever I want now, and I can get rid of some things that don't make sense, or I can say, hey, do I really need to produce these? I mean, yes, I like them, and I like every snake I produce, and I like every baby I produce, but I'm like, I don't really need, do we really need to produce 170 or 180 clutches of ball pythons a year? Not really. I like them. I love producing them. I love working with them. We were this morning, Jay and I were downstairs, and I was telling him, I was just literally going through and feeding, and switching animals, like food into animals' cages. And I told him, I said,
how geeked out you were.
Yeah, I love the thought process. I'm not just throwing a rat in a cage. I'm thinking this female needs this many rats because she looks a little thin. This girl ate 2 rats. She's fine, But it's the strategy, the interest, where the science meets art. And that's what I love. I love the taking the science that I've learned over these years and applying it to the art of the instinct of like what an animal looks like. And no, listen, this girl's at 12 millimeter follicles, but I know if she's crushing food today, I know next week she's going to be at 15 millimeters.
Yep.
Whereas some people might just be like, oh, this gets 2 rats, this gets 2 rats, this gets 2 rats, this gets 2 rats. That's not the way I look at this at all. I look at this girl gets 2 rats, this girl gets 4 rats.
Yeah.
Well,
no, because the thing that was funny is like you had the one drawer pulled open, and you were like, because that's how he was explaining it to me. It was like, like when I'm leaving that open, I'm thinking like, oh, this one needs more food, and like starting to plan things out as you're moving through the enclosures.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm like, all right, this girl's already eaten 2 rats, but I can tell she needs another rat. She just looks like she. Whereas maybe 10 females before her had 2 rats, and I'm like, they don't need an extra rat. 2 rats is fine for them.
And that's how somebody is passionate about what they do when those little things excite you, right?
Yeah, and I was super excited. I mean, I couldn't wait to get in this morning. I couldn't wait to get in yesterday, and
especially because there was a storm today too.
Yeah, and by the way, I put males and females together after we fed, and there was like 12 females locked up within 2 hours. Dude. I know tomorrow morning there'll probably be even more. So it'll be really good.
Damn, son.
Can we rail this in?